Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about again. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it, and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m. Of course. Come on. We just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn. Do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what we're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy.
Hello, welcome into another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, the mental health podcast breaking the stigma. The mental health is talked about enough. My guest today is on a mission to help collect healing by sharing knowledge, by helping the collective understand energy, create their powerful product and tools to heal, their transmute energy, and opening their possibilities. Please welcome the founder of Hippie Healing Company and the Soul Shifter, Nikki Neal. How you doing?
How are you? Thank you. That was a tongue twister, huh?
It's like, I'm like, I'll eventually get it, I promise.
That's okay. I do a lot of different things, but definitely mental health and anxiety and things like that have definitely been a forefront in my own personal healing journey. And I really working with, other people and seeing that need. I've definitely been, on a mission myself, trying to spread awareness and, giving people the tools in order to combat that mental health. So.
Well, that's awesome. So let me ask you, what does the Soul Shifter mean? I mean, that's a title in its own right there.
So for the last 6 or 7 years, probably, I've been practicing energy work. So I'm a Reiki teacher. I've done IET training. I am a quantum healer. And one of my clients was like, you're like a soul shifter, right? Like, she's like, that's literally what you do. And I'm like, I actually really like that name. So one of my clients actually named me, and it was quite the honor,
That's awesome that you say quantum healing, because I did an interview with somebody that does quantum healing, and I thought it was so fascinating how exactly it works, and energy. That one seems to be popping up a lot too. A lot of Reiki masters, a lot of energy healers, and things like that too. So when I heard that, I'm just like, ooh, okay. Now we're talking, because it's something I've been getting bigger into as we go through these things like that. And as you see, if anybody's watching these early episodes would see that I'm starting to learn more about myself. And when it came to energy, that seemed to resonate the most because it made sense, because I'm hypersensitive to energy. So I tend to understand a lot of that stuff a lot more too. So.
And I think that that's what people are kind of, waking up to. I think that for a long time, it was like, oh, you're ADHD because you eat too much sugar, or, different things like that. But I think the more that we gain awareness and really kind of understand ourselves, and that we are very sensitive to energy, and energy is all around us, that I think that we're actually changing the perspective of what mental health actually looks like. And, I talked a lot to my clients about, we kind of get these negative labels when we are sensitive to energy, and we're aware of other people's, emotions and things like that. And I just think we've never really been taught that that's actually what we're doing, is kind of like walking around like an ocean wave, like pulling in energy and pulling it back to us, and then walking around trying to carry that load along with our own stuff that we have going on. And so I think that teaching people hey, this is actually normal, a lot of us are experiencing this, and there's actually different ways and tools that we can kind of practice on a daily basis in order to kind of combat that, inner critic, that anxiety and things like that. So that's kind of like my mission. I have a teaching background, so it's just like in me to want to kind of teach people what I learned on my journey and like what worked for me, and point people like in the right direction with resources, because I really believe that we all have the ability to heal things, and we just have to like gain the awareness of what it actually is, that root cause, and then we can kind of take like a full body approach in order to heal those things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very interesting though, because that shows up a lot more than ever. As energy keeps showing up more and more and more, and things like that. So, and it's interesting because ever since I started this whole thing, I've that's come up a lot. Like there was the energy alchemist that started the whole thing, then there was the other person that's energy healer, and then the energy this, and it's like it's weird at first because, like you said, not a lot of people taught us about it. We didn't know much about these kind of things. We didn't know what exactly to expect or what these things are, or what is this feeling I'm having, and everybody just kind of like, if you start telling people about it, they just look at you like, well, what the hell is that? What do you mean, dude?
Yeah.
I call it my spidey sense. When I tell people, it's like spidey sense, man. It's like, something's not right when you meet certain people. Like they give off a weird vibe is what I call it. They give off a weird vibe to me. Like they give this weird feeling, like I don't like it. And then, and it's like, and then the other theory I found out too is that, you attract people with your energy, and then you repel people that don't like your energy too. And I thought it was interesting because it makes sense, because that's how I explain to a lot of people. I'm like, well, the person's like, well, this person was supposedly my friend and now they're not my friend anymore. I'm like, well, maybe there's just they didn't like your energy you're giving off, and it could just be that too, and things like that too. So.
And I think people connect with you sometimes like for a season or for a reason. So I think sometimes people come in and they kind of mirror something that we need to see within ourselves. And then it's like, as we work through it, then they're kind of like, oh, wait, like they're kind of the truth, like they're being authentic. And I think that when we give off that authentic vibe, I think people that are not living authentically, you definitely feel it. And so they're kind of like, oh, let me get out of here. Like, I don't want to be seen over here,
Right.
So
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't like what you're dishing there. I'm not, and that's how I describe it to people. They'll look at me weird. I'm like, it's the energy you give off, man. People don't like it. Like they don't like it. That's why they repel away from it. And then you attract the people to you that all kind of feel like your energy will basically attract you like a magnet, basically, and things like that. So, and it's interesting though, because the more people I meet that do energy work and things like that, it's the more fascinating it gets, because you learn so much other things. And I think it's becoming the new thing now, because now I hear it more and more and more. Maybe now that I'm more in tune to the fact that I'm sensitive to energy and things like that, maybe now I'm starting to see these other type of people come into my life that all have the same different characteristics or something energy based, things like that. Reiki Masters, and one that pops up a lot too lately. And that's what started in the beginning. It was like little hints that like, hey man, look, they're trying to tell you something, and it just kept showing up, so it's so interesting to see.
I love that you're open to, because sometimes people are kind of like, oh, that sounds a little like woo woo, or that's kind of crazy. And so sometimes people, can think negatively about it. So it's so great that, you're open to it. When's your birthday? What's your sign?
I'm a Cancer. I'm July 10th, 1985.
Oh, okay. So that makes a lot of sense, because being a Cancer, you're one of the most like intuitive signs of the zodiac. It's actually like in tune with the moon. So you probably feel like kind of connected to the moon cycles, or like, you kind of know when things are like shifting too, energetically. Um, One of the things that I think kind of saved me on my journey, because I feel like being someone who's like a little bit different and outside the box, and like really had trouble finding community. That's kind of why I created one. But I think that one of the things that kind of helped me along the way was I really started learning about my birth chart. So um, I actually just taught a workshop on this. And basically, your birth chart is a snapshot of the universe, of all the planets, and like every single major alignment the moment that you were born, which basically makes up like your energy signature. And so as you start to dive in and learn about like your top 3 energy, which is like your sun sign, which is Cancer for you, but like your moon sign, your rising sign. When I found out my rising sign was in Scorpio, I'm like, oh wow, like this is why people either like love me or they hate me when they meet me. And I never understood that, but it's because when they meet me, they think I'm a Scorpio, and that's like the vibe that I give off. And so I don't know, it just helped me like kind of understand my energy better. And then I was able to kind of understand people more too, because I'm like, oh, okay, this is why people act this way, or this is why people respond, and it's actually not a me thing. It's like, I wasn't taking things so personally. And so it makes sense that, you being a Cancer, you can really tune into other people's emotions, and
Yeah.
Cancer is a water element.
Very
So
much.
you
I can feel
flow,
the moving emotions
like,
very
you know what I
much.
mean? You flow just like water does, because you're a water element. So you're very, you probably pick up a lot of people's energy and you're not
Mhm.
really aware of it. And that's why, a lot of us think, oh, wow, I have anxiety, or I have, all these other labels that, we're labeled with. But I think a lot of it is just because we're so sensitive and we're picking up so much, and we haven't really been taught to like spiritual hygiene of how to like clear our energy, how to protect our energy, how to ground our energy. So a lot of us are just out here, like floating around and like absorbing everything, and it can be overwhelming. And so that's kind of what I like to help teach people, or like help people, understand about their energy, because I always feel like it's like you feel like something's wrong with you, and that you get that like negative stigma. And I think that so many of us, because I was also born in 85, so we're the same, age. And I feel like that really, our generation really endured a lot. And now we're kind of like unpacking everything, of kind of like,
Right.
all right, like, I don't think this is normal. Like, I've been through a lot, and so I think, we're all just like processing being overwhelmed, with
Yeah.
life in general. And it's like, okay, can we talk about this? Like, I think we're all feeling this,
Exactly. That's the whole point. It says, let's talk about it. That's the whole idea this podcast exists. And the reason I started in the beginning was like, let's have a real conversation. Like, it's great. You can have somebody that's a doctor and everything else tell you things, but okay, so where's the real conversation? People just having a conversation on things. It doesn't make you any different than we're all human at the end of the day, is the way I look at it. So like the
Mhm.
conversation starts there, okay? So then we expand further to, okay, well, Nikki has these kind of things she brings to the table, or this person brings this to the table. And it's great because you bring other things to the table to expand the conversation even further. So, but the base of it is that we're all human, but where are we talking about these things? We're really not. You hear a lot of self-help ones. You hear all these celebrities talking about, okay, that's great, but where are the little guys, the little people out there that are talking about this thing? And it's not enough of us out here. And it's a high enough demand, as you've seen, like from when
Mhm.
I post about this thing has exploded since the beginning. Since I started in August, I was literally booked to the end of the year twice. So, and it was just
I
strictly
know.
Mondays. That wasn't even during the week. During the week happened after I got into the new year. I was like, you know what? Let's crack this thing open and see how many other conversations we can have. And ever
Mhm.
since then, it's just been a broad spectrum of just different people bringing different things to the conversation. So when you said birth chart, I was like, I've always wondered about that stuff because I've had somebody say that to me, and I've tried to get somebody to come on and talk to me about it. But I'm like, that makes sense. Now I have more things to go look into now because I'm
Yeah.
curious, because I've heard people say stuff about it, but I just never had anybody really explain to me what it is exactly. So I was so fascinated that, I have different signs, like the moon and everything else too. So maybe it might make sense because my wife, she's actually a Scorpio. So, and I know she got me big into the whole energy thing with crystals and things like that. And,
Mhm.
all the different astrology things I start really digging into, and a lot of stuff starts matching up. So it starts making sense after you start looking at it. Because I do feel a lot of people's energy around me, and I can feel their emotions too. Like you can feel a lot of times I can read when people are not like, if something's bothering some people, I really can tell. Because a lot of times I'll ask them like, hey, how you doing? Or my thing now is I tell you, a lot of my friends do now, because me, as I say, hey, how's your mental health? Because if you think
Mhm.
about it, if I come to you and say, Nikki, how you doing? You're going to say, okay. But if I
Yeah.
say, hey, how's your mental health? You're going to stop and go, wait, what the hell did he just ask me?
Yeah.
It stops and makes you think for a minute. Hey,
Mhm.
what is he really asking me? What is the root of this question he's asking me? And it opens the conversation up to like, well, no, how you doing? Are you doing okay? You seem like something bothering you. And it's usually the opening, even if you don't know anybody randomly, you just start asking them that question too. A lot of them just look at you kind of weird. And after you start explaining it to them, then it opens the conversation. You start dialogue with people. Even it's hard to start a conversation with somebody, that right there gets the conversation going, because they're like, well, what the hell is that? What's he talking about? What does he mean? Because not a lot of people talk about it, because mental health is taboo for a lot of people. They just think, okay, well, if you're depressed, feel better. If you're having anxiety, you just need to relax or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I wish that was really how this really worked, but I'm great, you know. I love my boss though. She tried to talk to me one day. I had an incident at work where I had a freak out session, so I walked outside to collect my thoughts, and she goes, "Well, I heard you had a little freak out." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not even that," but I'm thinking in my mind, this conversation I had, a dialogue is going different. I'm saying, okay, you know, just like, you know, she clearly has no idea what she's talking about. I love her to death, but she has no idea. She's that older crowd. She doesn't want to know. Even if you would explain to her, she look at you and say, okay, and it's like, yeah, and not really get what exactly you're saying. So she's like, oh, okay, I'm just thinking in my head, you know, like having that internal dialogue, kind of like what it's like that girl from they didn't have in Mean Girls, you know, she's having an internal dialogue with the girls, the kids explain the math problem to her. It's basically what's happening in this conversation. She's like talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, you don't get it. You don't, yeah, okay. Yeah, clearly you don't understand this. I like you, I love you, boss, but you just don't get it.
It's so true. And I think that, you know, now that more people are talking about it, I think social media has kind of opened the door a little bit with people
really
being a
has.
little bit, you know, more upfront and open about how they're feeling. And I just think it's, you know, a beautiful thing, because I think so many people, you know, are struggling. And for such a long time, it was like this negative stigma. And I feel like our generation is like, I go to therapy, I go to therapy, I go to therapy. And I'm like, all right, this is great. I love this, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, it's amazing that.
Well, you got to remember though, therapy was always taboo for people, because it was just like, oh, you go to a therapist, you get pills. I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works, guys. Unfortunately, that's not how we do things around here, but okay. But I like that the fact that, you know, you do energy, or there's other people that do other things, because then it opens the possibilities of like, hey, listen, therapy may not be your niche or whatever you want. You can go check out this, check out Nikki, check out these other people that I keep introducing everybody to, you know, and they know where to find you, because I'll have all your information listed in the videos and things like that. Hey, listen, go check them out. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on all these places. And with social media expanding so much, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because the bad thing is that, you know, more people with hateful comments reach out more and positive ones. And, you know, when it comes to all that stuff, you can't read all that crap. You know, everybody has an opinion. They may not agree with, like you're saying, like, you know, they may say, oh, well, she's just crazy, she's making things up. She's not. Okay, but if it's not your thing, then scroll on. Like, why do you have to say something? Like, why are you so compelled to go ahead and make a nasty comment to somebody? It's just not worth it. What are you getting at the end of the day?
I mean, I always say hurt people hurt people. So I think that, you know, it's a lot easier to project and to kind of get, you know, other people to focus on something else, versus you taking a look at yourself in the mirror and saying, you know what, I'm going to hold myself accountable, and I'm not going to be, you know, an asshole today, you know, like. And so I just think that, you know, like you said, you have to learn to ignore, you know, certain things. And I think that, you know, being an empathic person, I am so empathic. My moon is actually in Cancer. So I love people more than, you know, I've loved myself. I love to nurture and take care of people. And that's really hurt me, because I didn't really learn boundaries growing up. Right. And so like now I have, you know, these healthy boundaries in place. And I've noticed like, wow, my mental health is actually a lot better too, because I think sometimes we surround ourselves with people that, whether it's family or long-term friends or just different people that, you know, we feel connected to, but sometimes those people are the ones contributing to, you know, our energy, or maybe the beliefs that we're kind of carrying about ourselves. And so I had to really learn to see people as energy versus kind of like seeing them for whatever label they were, or you know what I mean. And so that really kind of helped me like move away from things that I felt like weren't good for me, or recognize like toxic behavior, because I'm like, wow, like I actually feel really crappy when I'm around this person, and my stomach hurts and I get a headache and I'm tired. And so then I'm like, well, I don't feel you know, like that around other people. And so it was really eye-opening for me. And I think it really kind of helped me being so empathetic, being able to kind of say, okay, like people are energy. So they're either, you know, helping me or kind of holding me back. And I have to be honest with myself and then kind of move accordingly. And I think once you really start learning boundaries too, you really start to see like a shift in yourself, because you're like, wow, like I'm actually a lot more peaceful than, you know, I realize, you know, I'm not
exactly.
I'm not picking up all this stuff. So that's, a really great thing about energy and kind of like tuning in or having a higher awareness, like when you're around certain people or how certain people, make you feel, or certain circumstances, like you said, like with your boss. So it's like, obviously you kind of knew, all right, this might not be the best fit for me because, I can't be me here, or I don't have the understanding or support, or you know what I mean. So I feel like those things kind of push us in the right direction too. And it's like, now you're doing this great podcast and, sharing your experiences, with other people that I'm sure can relate,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And I love when you say boundaries because I don't think enough people set boundaries. That actually was a conversation me and someone had, and it was nobody I know personally. It's somebody I met through TikTok. Me and her, she came in one day randomly. I was live just hanging out. She came in. We were talking about something. I don't remember what we were talking about. They were something about mental health. She came in. And ever since then, we've been friends ever since then. We kind of talk all the time. She goes live and she does a lot of stuff because, she's like, well, you did it. So now I want to go do it. Okay, cool. But she had a problem where she doesn't set boundaries with people. And I'm like that friend. I forgot how it was described the last time. I'm that asshole friend that just like, I'm honest, but I'm honestly because I want you to understand that I'm trying to get you to understand that I'm looking at trying to help you learn something, not trying to be rude to you. I'm just being honest with you because a lot of people can't handle honesty when it comes to that kind of thing. Then it's perceived, oh, well, you're the asshole. Am I really being the asshole, or am I really just telling you how it is? And I'm just letting you know that you need to set boundaries for yourself, because if you don't, you're going to let people use you like a doormat the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it made you feel better once you set those boundaries in. You felt less stressed out, all these other things. You don't allow people to take over and set the dynamic for you. You tell them how it's going to go. Well, this is how it's going to go. This is how I'm doing it. If you don't like it, you can see the set door right there. Don't let it hit you where God should have split you, kind of thing, And it's like, a lot of people see that as rude, but it's being honest. It's like, listen, I have these boundaries. If you cross them, okay, then it's 86, you're out. You're out of here. I don't want anything to do with you. And it's so interesting too, because people talk about it, but a lot of people have trouble setting boundaries because they're like, well, I don't want to disappoint these people, or I don't want to just like, well, too bad. That's what I tell them.
Yeah.
Too bad. You'll get over it, won't you?
I think that a lot of it has to do with that, like, programming and like imprinting growing up of being like the good girl and like the good boy. And I actually in my monthly community, my Soul Shifter Revolution community, I teach a workshop called Death of the Nice One, because it originally was Death of the Good Girl, but I have men and women in the group. So I'm like, okay, this, goes both ways, and people do, like you said, struggle with that. But it's because, right, we're kind of like in this character of, I have to be the good one in order to be loved, accepted, seen, heard, you know what I mean? And so you kind of shrink yourself in order to be able to fit in. But it's like, I think along the way, you kind of learn like, wow, I was never really supposed to be in this crowd anyway. And so let me just kind of be me and, set the boundaries and take up more space. And then I think you kind of attract like more of your kind of people, or who you're meant to, be around. But it definitely is a journey. And I think a lot of people really struggle with that because it's, they want to be loved by the people that, they feel like they should be loved by. And I think a lot of times when we're kind of on that journey, it's usually people that we care about the most, whether it's like a partner or a sibling, or, your mother, your father, your child, whatever it is. And it's like, I think that makes it a lot harder than, just saying like, oh, you know what, like, screw you. I think we're so used to being like, oh, that's just how so-and-so is. So we're going to like, accept that behavior. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, we're actually not going to accept that behavior anymore. Like, that is not healthy, So
yeah, that's how my mom is though. It's funny you say that though, because that's how it is with her. They're like, oh, that's how she is. I'm like, okay, that's great how she is. So see how well the stand-up's been working, because me and her stopped talking for like 13 years. Okay, so a little backstory. She abandoned me when I was 10. Didn't realize how many problems it was going to cause up until this point. It took up till about a year ago, when I started finally getting some help that I needed. I didn't realize the effects it had on me. But that was always the thing I heard, is that, okay, well, you can need to call her because she won't call you. You know she is. And it's how they always would sell it to me. We know how she is. Well, I don't care, because guess what? We'll play Mexican standoff at this point. I'll stay here, you stay there, and we'll just see which one of us cracks first. And we'll see, because it took until my brother's wedding, when I had my twin girls, for us to finally start talking again. In that whole time between, like I said, I would call, if I would call, I would call a 5-minute call, and then I got to go. I don't need anything. And that's it. I tried to make an effort. but I just couldn't do it. I was like, no, why should I appease to her when, the phone works two ways. She can call me just like I can call her. And my brother's always like, well, that's just how she is. Okay, well, that's cool. You can cater to her. I'll do my thing, and we'll see how this ends up going, because at this point, it's like I don't know how I feel right now, because I still haven't gone through the stage of forgiveness for that whole thing. And I think that's the hardest part. It's just like I always heard that, oh, well, we always had to play by her rules. And I'm the type of person that I don't like playing by other people's rules. I like to do my own thing. And I think that's what caused friction between us in the beginning, is that she was so controlling that I just couldn't do it anymore. I just got tired of it. And I don't remember what it is exactly caused the argument between us, but we had a big argument, blow out, and then she just went, and that was it. Just dropped me right there at my dad's doorstep when I was like 10 years old, and just said, well, here you go. And then left me there for an hour by myself while my dad was coming home from work to come let me in the apartment where he was staying at the time, and things like that. And, little by little, I didn't realize how many problems caused. Like, a lot of anger issues I had were resulting from that. And a lot of times I get like in an arguments, heat arguments, I'll get real defensive. And I'll just start getting like real, like, oh, I'll start shutting down and pushing people away, because I'm like, I'm already waiting for the abandonment to happen, because I think in my mind, I go back to that moment when I was 10 and I relive it in my mind, and it causes me to just go into a complete meltdown status where I just start saying whatever. And it's a really bad habit I'm trying to get past and things like that. But it's hard though, because it's been so long. I've waited, what is it now? I was 10, about 20, no, wait, about 30, well, yeah, about 29 years almost, because I'll be 40 in July this year. But, it's like I 29 years of that, just constantly building, just constantly just going. And then I ran into someone I stayed with for 15 years. Who was a narcissist, and I had to deal with all that. I had mental attacks every day. She gaslit me. She basically questioned reality. At one point, I was hearing voices in the back of my head telling me, hey, man, you don't need to be here anymore, kind of thing like that. And it was getting to that point, and it's like, then I'm taking it. I'm getting angry at everybody else around me. I'm shooting my rage at them. I'm getting in arguments with her, And so many of these things just snowballed all together. It's just a rolling downhill like Indiana Jones running from the boulder, basically, type deal. And here it comes, it's rolling down. I'm trying to, and it's like you don't make it. It's almost like Critters, actually. If anybody remembers Critters, where the kids running through the field trying to pass by the ball, those little dudes all together. It's just like that boulder just hits you, and that's it. And I think that's what the point is, when it's like, now I knew it was time to finally do something about this.
I have so many things to say about your story, but the first thing that I want to say is,
it's a lot. I know it's a lot to unpack for people.
I've actually experienced like something very similar, and my background is very similar also. But what I think is amazing is through your story. So I teach this workshop called Grounding Your Nervous System. And I talk about how basically like the body always keeps score and it always remembers. So sometimes we're like, oh, that happened 30 years ago, and we hear like time heals all wounds, but it really doesn't, right? And the body remembers. So in the present moment, when we experience triggers, it's because the body, right, is remembering something from a long time ago. And so it gives us kind of that opportunity to kind of sit with it. And I think a lot of us, first of all, have never, it's like actually we are taught to react, right? Like let our emotions kind of take over and then just like move on and compartmentalize and keep going. But for you, or like when that happens, or what I've had to do and what I try to teach my clients is that we have to first take a moment to like ground ourselves and like get back into our body. Because usually when we're experiencing triggers, it's like we kind of like jump outside of ourselves almost. We're feeling like so anxious, and our body's like, oh, it's not safe here. And so we're kind of like, let me get out of here. And so the first thing is kind of like that, building the toolbox where you're, maybe doing breath work or yoga or something, like just getting in nature or listening to your favorite song or screaming or crying or whatever it is that you need to do to kind of regulate your nervous system. And then it's like, once you regulate, then it's like that mastering of the mind. And so like, I would ask myself like, oh, well, are you really being abandoned right now? Like, is that really happening? And then I would be like, well, no, you know what I mean? And I'm just reacting because, and so when we sit with it in that moment, I feel like that's when like the real magic happens, because we actually start to tell our body like, no, you're actually safe. And that's actually not the truth. So you don't have to like really freak out anymore about that. And I feel like as we do it, over time, it's like eventually we don't feel that way anymore, because we're like, oh, wow. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
and I always tell my clients too, when it comes to forgiveness work, that I think a lot of times we've been taught that like when we forgive people that we're kind of accepting or tolerating like the behavior. But I always tell my clients that forgiveness is really like a self-love like kind of type of thing, because when we think about like our energy, we're kind of like a energetic suitcase, right? And it's like we can only carry and hold on to so much. And so when we forgive, we actually like lighten our load and like take something out of our suitcase that, is really heavy and dense, and we're like not using it anymore,
Hmm.
but we're also dragging it around, with us and into relationships and different situations, you know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
think that like taking that time and, doing that, you just start to feel like so much lighter, where you're like, oh wow, like, I'm gonna forgive her because like obviously, and obviously I don't know your mom from a hole in the wall, but knowing my mother in a similar situation and things, it was like, she didn't have the parenting or the support or, growing up. And so it's like she didn't know how to do those things, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I feel like even though there's that empathetic like understanding, it's like we still felt it as kids, you know what I mean? So we still have to work through it and like deal with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's kind of like, oh, okay, like it wasn't really a me thing. Cause I feel like when things like that happen, it also leaves that like imprint of like, wow, like I'm not good enough, or like,
Yeah,
why did, you know
exactly.
what I mean? And so you're carrying that around, and it's like, well, that's the furthest thing from the truth, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's the way it makes us feel. And so I feel like having that conversation and you just sharing that story, can guarantee you probably a lot of people have experienced something similar. And I feel like it just, when we talk about these things, and I feel like for, a lot of us, we felt really alone. Like, oh, I was the only one
Yeah.
who went through this. Like, no one's going to understand me. You know what I mean? And then I'm
Yeah,
like, wow,
exactly.
I went through that. Like, you know what I mean? So I know other people have too, and I think that having those conversations and just, helping people like have that awareness of like, hey, like you're not alone. We're all in this kind of together. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think sometimes just what people need to hear, because we're all out here trying to do our best.
Right. No, I agree 100% with you. And that's the whole idea behind this is when I bring people in, I'm like, I guarantee somebody's going to hear this and they're going to resonate with what you're saying. And I said, if you touch one person's heart, you've done enough right there, because they'll tell
Hmm.
their people about where they heard this from and things like that. And it's a lot of times it's a lot of vulnerabilities, really, if you think about it, because we're live on the internet, you're sharing this on the world, regardless if we're live or not. These videos go out to YouTube, all these other places for people to see. And the things that get shared in this show, it gets wild. We've had some moments here where we've had some dicey moments. At the oh shit moment of the year in the beginning was the one guy who was telling us that he was basically sitting with a gun in hand, waiting at the edge of the bed right before the fight, right before the interview. He said it too. He's like, yeah, I was sitting there, and I'm like, oh shit. He's just like started saying this to us in the middle of the interview. He started telling us about it. I was like, no.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. I was like, "Oh God, here we go, man!" It's not about as crazy as the second week of the show I did, where I had a woman tell me she was dead on the table for 5 minutes. I was like, "What?" I was
Wow.
like, "Get out of here!" This one also had like 16 rounds of chemotherapy. Pretty much has half of her vital organs are missing. How she's still alive, I have no idea. Nothing less than an act of God can only explain that one. But she's still there, still ticking and everything else, and it's interesting when you get into the show, because when I interviewed a Columbine shooter survivor too, that one got interesting quick. I didn't know where she was, but she said she was in the library. Okay. Didn't describe exactly what was going on until we were recording. So about 10 minutes into this thing, she starts telling me, yeah, Pete, I was under the table in the library, or I could see the whites of the eyes of the guy, one of the guys that were involved in the thing. I'm like, what? What? Hold on. What? You're under the table? I said, oh, God, what are you doing under the table? I'm hiding under some chairs. I'm thinking in my mind, oh, God, please don't get under the goddamn chairs. So get out of the chairs. You're like that person in the movie yelling at the screen, don't get out of the chairs. Stay down. She's like, oh, I wasn't coming out. Because I saw somebody get popped right in front of me. And I was like, oh, no, dude, what? And she's like, yeah. And I could see him. He's telling me to come out. And I'm like, oh, God, my heart's racing on the other side of the thing. And it's audio. I did an audio recording. We didn't do video yet because the show wasn't going live until the 15th of September. So this was an earlier one, and I'm over there sweating bullets like, oh God, man. I think I'm in the situation because, I'm an empath. I can feel that. So I'm feeling that energy that's going on. I'm like, oh God, I'm sitting there gripping the mic just like this. Like, oh God, she's going to get out of there. She's gonna get out of there. She's okay. She's like, yeah, then he walked off or something because something wasn't working. I'm like, oh God. And it was the craziest conversation I ever had early on in the show. And I was just like, oh man, had I known that was gonna lead to more interesting conversations.
Talk about PTSD, huh?
I was like, oh God, I was feeling it for her too, man. She was talking about it, telling us about it, and I didn't realize she was that close. And she was like, yeah, I can see the whites of the eyes. So I'm like, see, I'm thinking, she's got to be like 6 feet away from this guy at least, maybe more. She's seeing the whites of his eyes, so she's obviously seeing him, but he's not looking at her. He's trying to tell her to come out from under there. I'm thinking, don't get out under the table, bitch. Don't get out under the table.
I know. Like every scary movie, like, you're like, why are you going that way?
Run! Go the other way. What are you doing? Yes, it was what it's like, but it was just like, it was so intriguing. So then after that, I was like, man, this is going to get interesting. I have a feeling just like this thing's going to get interesting. And it did. Beginning of the year, we had the incident where the guy was telling us about that. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, here we go. And then it was another girl I had on the show named Whitney. She came on, and let me tell you, that was a roller coaster ride. This girl was taking us up and down, kidnapping, sexual assault, things like, it's just like the list just went on. And I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? How you function on a daily basis, I have no idea, because after all that, I don't, like, hats off to you. And you never know. She's never really told anybody that. And then when she started telling people that and people realized what was going on, it was like, oh my God, really? I'm like, you're telling me, man.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy because what really started my like energy work and this whole like journey with myself was I was leaving a toxic marriage with a narcissist, and I thought when I left the marriage and I started the divorce that was going to be end, and that was like really just the beginning. And here we are like 5+ years later, and I'm still like dealing with it and going to court. But when I really started to dig in and really like look at, why do I attract these kind of people? Like, what is going on? And I really started to dig into my childhood. It was like, you can see how, certain things mirror each other, or how, you kind of, you take in what even though you like swear you're not going to do, what I mean? Do that. It's funny because I taught kindergarten for 11 years, and I used to always go into the office, which, we're not supposed to do. We were supposed to go in the teacher's room and copy, but I always used to go into the office, and I was like best friends with the secretary, who was like this older lady who was like a second mom to me. And I remember just like telling her about my life. And like one day she just was like, how, like, I would never think that you've been through all of this stuff. Like how, and when I think now, it's like, I've been through so much more now than what I went through then, that I'm just like, wait a minute. Like so I definitely think that, it is so important, that like vulnerability. And I actually am going to be probably within the next month or so, like launching my own podcast called
There you go.
And it's all about like that vulnerability, like really sharing all the things that I've been through, but really like the lessons that I learned behind it. Because I think so many of us have, or, when I was working with one-on-one with clients, I feel like whatever they came in with, I was like, oh, I've experienced that. Like, let me help you. Like, this is what I had to do. And so, I think, being on other podcasts and just like seeing what you're doing, and I just think it's so amazing, and the way that you can really help so many people by just kind of like sharing your story, or what you've been through, or connecting other people through their stories, and bringing in awareness or so many different things. I just feel like that's what the world really needs right now, is just like kind of like support and community, right? I feel like everyone feels like they're on their own island and they're all by themselves type thing. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so I think that us kind of rallying together and being like, hey, you're not a weirdo, like we're all weird together. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. It's a thing, united we stand, together we'll fall, basically. I know it's overused for a lot of people, but you think about it, we're uniting together, we all may have different problems, but something connects us all. Like you and I have had almost the same things. I was going to suggest, if you haven't read the book by Mia Hanks, I've actually interviewed her on the show. She did a book called The Bridesmaid. It was about her narcissistic ex. You may relate to that a little bit in that book. But it was funny. Me and I actually lived about 35 minutes away from each other because we were down in the Houston area. Just give an idea where we're at. Where she was in the north part of it, and I used to work in that area a little bit, so I know where she was at. And when she sent me a copy of the book with it, signed it for me and everything too, and I was all excited. I was like, heck yeah, you know. When I talked to her, she literally couldn't have the camera on because that's how bad her situation was with hers. And it was like she was living in the same neighborhood as he was for a long period of time, and I was like, no, I could do it, man. No, mine just took. I moved far away from her because I couldn't be near her. She was just that toxic. She later on at the end started getting physically abusive and things like that too, and very verbally abusive as well. And at first, I had made the really bad habit of just like responding to her, you know, spewing things out to me. And then with my wife now, she's like, no, we're not going to do all that shit. This is what we're going to do. And she's like, she's just literally told me no. And, you know, I get in a lot of like discrepancies with her, but I mean, it's what I need to hear. Like just the real raw aggressiveness of her. She'll tell me things and it'll piss me off. Like it pisses me off, but I want to hear it, but I need to hear it though. At the end of the day, like, you know, she tolerates a lot of my shit, honestly. And she's been through a lot with me. And you know, hats off to her because she deals with a lot of my shit, man. But you know, she's been through her own problems too. Like, you know, if eventually she'll eventually come share her story, because I'm sure that one will blow this off, take everybody's else's and just kind of put it to the side. Like, yeah, hey, listen, you know how small they're over there. Because hers, I've heard some of the story. I've only heard some of the things, and it's just it's whoo, it's a lot. It's one of those. It's going to have to be one of those closed sessions, private one-on-one kind of things. And, you know, and it'll be a very limited crowd that gets to see it, you know, because it's going to be very triggering to a lot of people too, you know, and things like that. And it's just interesting, you know, because a lot of times, you know, people you hear that they feel like they're alone. And that's a lot of times leads to suicidal ideation and things like that. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm a burden or I'm alone. So we're actually going to do a panel. I think it's May 5th. I'm going to hammer the date out. We're working on, I think, May 5th right now. It's the decision. We're going to do it. I have 6 people assembled, including a Dr. Kristen, who's on my show as well. So we're going to have that discussion right there. And it's the hope of many, actually. I'm going to try and do as many as possible. So I'm going to see how it goes. And then from there, I'm going to collect another 6 people, and we're going to have the same conversation, like, you know, and we're going to talk about the subject that not a lot of people want to talk about. So if you want to be involved, let me know. I will put your name into consideration for it. Everything else, I think I've got enough for another set at least. But if not, okay, you know, I move people around just to try and fit them in and just try and mix up the different people that are in there. So I want to get different people's perspectives on it.
I would love to. I would
love to. Definitely. Well, it's awesome. You're going to start a podcast. I'm excited. That's what I love to hear. You know, yeah, on this show, I get a lot of people that do start podcasts. And one of them, I think, you know, the one I talked to last week on Friday was the one that she had one that's called Shift Talking. It's very interesting how the whole acronym of SHIFT and everything else like that. It was interesting too. So if you haven't seen that one, you might want to check that one out too. If you're interested, when you get going, let me know, because I have a bunch of other friends that do podcasting as well too. There's Emotionally Unavailable. There's a couple other ones. I know Retrieving Sandy, Mentally a Badass, Mikey on the Mic. There's a few other people that I talk to in a general circle. So we'll get you out there so you can tell everybody about what you're doing.
Yeah,
and
I would love to.
There's another gentleman too by the name of Rory. He does the Podcasters Nation, and literally that's what he does. He interviews podcasters about their podcast. So let me know when you get up and going, and I'll get you linked up with him for sure. That way, you know, he can get you on there, because I've been mine too. That was the first interview I've ever done before with anybody on any podcast I've ever done was with him, and it was the morning of the September 15th when the shows premiered on the network. Mm-hmm. So he was like, "Oh, you got to go record the show." I'm like, "Yeah, 10 o'clock, you know, but I'm here right now." He's like, "Oh."
It's funny because for a while now, I definitely intuitively have been guided to definitely write a book. Like, it was funny that you brought that up, to start the podcast, and definitely being drawn to that right now. And the third thing was to create like a monthly community, because I feel like when I was going through the height of my stuff, I took like my healing journey like very seriously, and I was going to see like a shaman and different energy workers and, you know, different things, because while I think therapy is important, I think we need more than to just talk. Like, I think we actually have to move the body kind of and get stuff out of the body. And so you know, along my journey, because of the court system, which is why I couldn't leave. Like, I'm still trying to battle the court, because in their eyes, they're kind of just like, well, you have a child together and that's their father. So, you're stuck with them, basically, is what they told me. And I'm like, well, when mental and emotional abuse is established, and we also have, a running record of restraining orders with physical type of domestic stuff, I'm like, clearly, there is some type of issue, but it's been definitely an uphill battle. And so my
Yeah.
finances were really attacked, during the situation. And so it was like everyone that I worked with, they just were like, sorry, you don't have money to pay me. I'm not helping you anymore. I don't want to talk to you. Like, and so when I was working with clients, I'm like, not only did I notice that, people need more than like a one and done session, but I also, I'm like, people need support, people need more, and, people need community. And so I'm like,
Hmm.
I need to start this monthly community. And so I offer this monthly community for only $5 a month. I think kind of something similar that you do, where I like teach workshops and different things, but I also do energy work, and I, just did the astrology class, like I was telling you, and try to do things like that, because I think, giving people knowledge, and, as healers, I think, we see in the spiritual community, it's like, come to me and I'm the guru and I know everything. And, and I like to give
Everybody,
people
it's Miss
information.
Cleo over here.
I like to give people information, because I'm like, no, you can do this. Like, I can help you on your journey. I can give you, like, these, like, tidbits, and then you can come back when you need more. But like, you really are responsible for like doing that work. It's like when you get triggered, it's like you have to make that decision. Do I want to get angry and act like, how I always do? Or do I want to kind of sit with myself and say to myself, all right, like, why am I actually feeling anger? Like, what is that actually? Because usually anger is like a secondary emotion, right? So it's like, oh, well, I actually feel hurt. I actually feel abandoned. I actually feel like, my feelings aren't
Yeah.
validated. And so then you're like, oh, all right, well, that's actually not going on right now. Like, I can actually move through that, And so that's where I think like the magic happens. And so not only do I kind of try to teach those things, but anything that I like did on my journey that worked for me, I feel like the teacher in me like creates tools. So I have like journals, and I have card decks, and it's like whatever your jam is, I kind of have like something, whatever, whether you want to work like independently or like
Yeah.
one-on-one exclusive, you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
whatever kind of support you need, I kind of try to put out there, because I feel like everybody likes to work in different ways too. And so, but it's just really like important to get that awareness and that knowledge out there, because I think that a lot of the things that we were taught as I was going through my journey, I'm like, these are a bunch of lies. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we actually, and so, just giving people kind of that A to B, so that the way they
Yeah.
don't have to, do all the, the work. And so, I think that's, really important too. And so that's kind of why I wanted to start the podcast, because I'm like, that will help me, reach more people, and
Hmm.
be able to kind of, like, give people those tools, what they need and stuff. And so I'm also tired of hearing the yelling in my ear about go out and do this. So I'm like, okay, it's time. We're doing it. We're doing
No, see, I did the
it.
same thing. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. And a friend of mine, he's like, hey, Spotify, you can record your own podcast. So I did. I had one early on that was called Pete's Corner Store, and it was just a collection of the craziest stories that I've ever experienced, just working in just anything in general. And it's out there still. Everybody keep in mind, this is the first edition of things. It got wilder as I brought in a co-host, so it was a bad idea. I didn't recognize it soon enough. So that's what actually evolved into this, as I changed to go to this subject instead, as soon as I started having my own mental health issues. And I was like, well, I wonder what people are talking about more of this stuff, because I want to know more. And then I find that there's less and less out there. And I'm like, well, let's go for it. I posted the idea, and then somebody had reached back out and was like, hey, I got this network I'm starting. And I'm like, okay, is this a real email kind of thing? Because I wasn't sure if it's
Mhm.
real or not, but it was like, okay, so I was skeptic at first, but I still am. I'm still here now, and it's been great ever since then. I get heard around the world. I've had guests all the way from Australia, all the way down to Ireland, the UK. I get a lot of people from there too.
Mm.
So I'm haven't learned a lot of time zones. That's always fun. So, but yeah. But
That is
listen,
the trickiest part, I think, right?
I
That
did
is
for your
definitely-
podcast though. You should bring me on and do the star chart with me sometime and see what it comes out and see if people are, because I'm interested to know what my other signs are and everything like that too.
If you, when we're done, if you send me your information, because I'll need, in order to find you can go on Google, honestly, and type in free birth chart. And
Yeah.
then you literally just need to know, it will ask you your name, the place, like the city and state or
Uh-huh.
the country that you were born, and the time that you were born. And the time is important because, like I said, it takes that snapshot.
Yeah, I'll have to
Uh,
ask him if my dad knows what the time is. I think I was looking at that because I was always curious what the other stuff would be on there because I've heard people talk about it. I was like, man, I wonder what mine would be. I'm kind of interested now because my wife did a tarot card reading when we were dating, and I've never even thought about it until now when she started doing the readings and stuff. It was so spot on. It was scary. It was like, dude, are you reading my thoughts? And she's like, no,
yeah.
this is what the cards are saying. And I'm just like, oh, this is so interesting. And I have a friend named Catherine. She does another podcast called The Willing Hill Matters one. She does like alternative stuff. She does oracle readings for me all the time. And a lot of them are spot on with what she's saying. And it's so weird to me because it's like, oh, hold on. Are we reading my thoughts now? Because it's like, it's all making sense because it's like, she'll give me discrete description of what they are and what the cards are saying to her and things like that. So, and it got really interesting though. So I've been more fascinated. And now I've heard that again. I'm like, yeah, now I want to know more about that too. So
I read cards too, and I feel like you can read cards, and that's why you're kind of being drawn to it. And
that's true.
so, when I first started, it was like right after my daughter was born, and I remember like my first deck, I got this like it's called the psychic tarot deck. So it's kind of an oracle deck, but it's set up kind of like a tarot deck because it has
Mhm.
the four different elements, but instead of like the swords and the wands, it has colors. And so it was
Yeah.
easier. So I'd had like my crayons and like my little notebook, and I'd be like learning what the cards meant and stuff like that when I first started. But I feel like you just kind of intuitively too, like know what the cards mean, even if it's not necessarily what the card means. You're like, oh, okay, this is what it means for me or what it's trying to
Yeah.
say. So I think you should just practice. Like, you could do like a card of the day. And obviously your wife is like very in tune. So she,
Mhm.
you, and being a Scorpio, they're very aware, and they're also like the sign of like death and rebirth. So they're constantly like transforming, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're constantly evolving and trying to like be their best self, so to speak. So she probably encourages that from you too, because her energy
Yeah.
kind of is doing that. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
you
And
either come for
yeah,
the ride or I'm leaving you behind.
basically, yep. So, all right, guys, we're gonna start wrapping up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Nikki, thank you so much for coming. This was great.
Thank
Like I
you.
said, keep me posted on when the podcast when you get it up going, and
Will
I'll
do.
start reaching out to some people for you like that, and we'll see about getting you on there when you get closer, so you can start promoting it more to everyone and things like that. So, you're always welcome to come back if you ever want to come back and have a conversation again about whatever else you want to talk about. You're always welcome to come, honestly.
Definitely. It was a great experience. So thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. And listen, do you want to go ahead and plug some of your socials? Okay, guys, reminder as always, they're always going to be down below this video in case you haven't had a chance to see them. Nikki's going to tell you some, but I got them all listed as well for you.
So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok under The Soul Shifter. Also, my holistic product line is The Healing Hippie Co. on Instagram. And then you can find me on my website at soulshifterrevolution.com.
Awesome. Sounds great, guys. And you know where you can find me? I'm Pete for Anxiety and pretty much everything. X down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save somebody's life. Or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete for Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today.